Good afternoon and welcome to the LPA Group PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time by the Q&A tab situated in the right corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives in the meeting itself. However, the company can review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll. And I'd now like to hand you over to Paul Curtis, CEO. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hi there, good afternoon and hi everybody. Welcome to the LPA investor presentation January 24. Pleased to be here. I'd like to introduce myself and colleague Stuart. So I'm Paul Curtis. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of LPA Group. I've been in this position since March 2020, but I've been with the group for approximately 35 years, working across all of the divisions in multiple disciplines. Stuart?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of LPA Group. I joined LPA in March 23. My background is I'm qualified with PwC, having worked in the UK and overseas. I then spent 21 years in various senior finance leadership roles in Rolls-Royce Civil Aerospace in the UK and overseas. More recently, I've worked for a PE-backed company, which we sold in December 23. I'm really pleased to have joined the group as we seek to grow the business.
Excellent. So what we're going to do, we've got about 25 slides to get through. Probably take about 25 minutes, and obviously then there can be questions that we can talk through. We'll tell you a little bit about who we are. We'll go through the financials of the business, and then we'll give you a bit of a flavour as to where we're trying to take the business over the coming years. So, for those who don't know, who are LPA? So, we're an engineering group, UK-based, that specialise in electronic and electromechanical components and systems. Our core industries are railway, aerospace and defence, and then niche industrial and infrastructure markets. We're definitely not into fitting out buildings or anything like that. The infrastructure is more things like ports, railway stations, and that type of industry. We sell to a multitude of customers around the world, and everyone from very small companies up to some of the flagship companies that you see on this slide here. I'd like to take you through a couple of these to give you a flavour of the things that we actually do. So starting up near the top left, Siemens, which is obviously a very worldwide name. We work with them at multiple sites in the UK, but in particular we work with them in Austria. They actually won the project from Transport for London to build 1,000 new cars for the underground system. So they are currently building to replace the Piccadilly line trains that are currently running around, and as I say, have an order for 1,000. Those will be built in Austria, and then they will come to the UK for finishing off before they go into service. We're actually one of only 4 UK companies that got onto that project, and we designed and will supply the complete interior lighting systems and the door status lights for the outside. So that's the lights that when it comes into the station, on the outside of the train, all around the doors, it's a red light or a green light, trying to direct the passengers when and when not to enter the train. So that programme, you'll start to see those trains come into service during 25, and that will run for about another 2.5 years of production. It's actually part of a bigger project where Transport for London actually requires 3,000 cars, and this is the first tranche of 1,000. For us, that's approximately £5 million of revenue, and we hope that then repeats for the other 2,000, which will be worth 10,000 at today's money, but obviously more when we take into account inflation. Whilst we're talking about supplying to Transport for London, if I come down to here, you can see that we supply to them. So at the moment, Transport for London are refurbishing the Central Line train. That train was built in the early 90s and needs a facelift. So we're supplying all of the interior lighting on that project. That's another £5 million project, and the first refurbished Central Line is actually running around the tracks, and over the next couple of years you will start to see those flow through as well. Coming out of transportation or in trains, we come down to Airbus. So at Airbus we do many things, directly and indirectly. So Airbus took a stake in the Bombardier Belfast facility where they build the A220 plane. And they build composite wings for that aircraft. That's equivalent to an Airbus A220 size for the 100 passenger territory. So we supply all of the clamps holding the fuel pipes that run through the wings. In another area of aerospace, we supply electrical connectors to a company called Safran, and those electrical connectors go into the business class seats that go on to, say, the A350 aircraft. So as I say, we do it direct and indirect. And then there are a multitude of customers here where we do similar type things. What they all demand is excellence in engineering. We have 3 sites, Saffron Walden, Thatcham and Normanton, which I'll go through in a minute. But the common thing is we are not in a commodity market. Everything we do is about engineering. You've got to be right first time. You've got to be able to back it up with service. We have highly invested factories with full capabilities from electronics and mechanical engineering. And that's incredibly important to our customer base. So LPA Connection Systems is our electromechanical division. This is up in Saffron Walden. That site, we have robotic welding, laser cutting, 5-axis machining, CNCs, automated cable cutting, and a full design capability to be able to design everything from simple electrical connectors to complex electrical cubicles that we sling underneath a train. So if I come back one slide, and if you look here, this is about 1.5 meters long, 70 centimeters then wide in depth. That is full of electrical equipment that's designed to be slung underneath the train. So all the stress engineering that we have to do to ensure that there is no chance that this can fall off a train at 100 miles an hour. So that capability is what we have within that factory. All of our sites are incredibly invested. So these parts down here, so this is for aircraft. When an aircraft comes into, say, lands at Heathrow, comes up to the gate, the first thing, or the most important thing now, is to turn the engines off. They want to save fuel and not pollute the atmosphere. However, you also need to be able to then run the air conditioning, the lights, keep the flight computers on, because that plane is going to be turning around and going out. The way you do that is you basically bring electricity in and you plug it into the nose of the plane. And so you'll see cables going into the front of the plane. We make those connectors that go into those aircraft, and we supply those all around the world. We also then do the cable carrying systems you'll see here that take the cables out to the front of the aircraft. It can be done many ways, but some airports like a cable carrying system, some airports use reelers and pits. So that's our kind of electromechanical capability there. If I come on to our components division, this is Channel Electric. So we supply here to aviation, defence and railway. Now, this is not a distributor like you would expect from the Nuon Air or a City Electrical Factor. This is actually a specialist partner for our suppliers. So we are effectively their sales and their engineering within the UK. So our teams will go and work with British Aerospace, Alstom, as I say, Leonardo, and get the components designed into the projects. And then our suppliers protect the route to market for us so that we get the business. So, as I say, we will supply relays in a train door system, or we have relays in the load management system that's built by British Airways. We have high performance cooling fans that go into airborne radar systems. We supply USBs into passenger charging for trains and many other things. If I go to lighting systems, this is our electronics division. So we have 2 state-of-the-art surface mount production lines, flow solder ovens, automated inspection equipment, and we can design from the ground up full PCB, right to software, at all control aspects. So the main product that comes out of this factory is LED lighting, and for that we are a market leader. So we supply all around Europe, Siemens, Alstom. We then supply into Japan, into Australia, and everywhere. But what we've also done is try to take that business into other areas. Because of the electronics capability that it's got, we believe it can actually move from lighting into other areas as well. And that's something I'll explain a little bit more with the seat electronics that you see listed here. So some operating highlights for the year. First one up here is a £5.3 million order that we received. That was actually for the product line for the acquisition that we did in March of last year. So as it says here, we bought the product line from Amphenol of what was their railway connectors for UK projects. So we bought that for 0.5 million, and to date we've had orders of about £6.5 million for that product line. We also received a further order for 2 million from Siemens in Austria for the OBB. That's a very prestigious overnight sleeper train that runs around Europe. So the first project we had for that was actually a few years ago, and the initial order was 1.8 million. And this was then a follow-on order for a further 2 million. And we expect further orders, at least another 2 tranches of that as we move through the coming years. Some of the work we're on, it's actually platformed. It's a bit like the automotive. You get onto a car, they sell it for a period of time. A lot of train manufacturers build a model and then sell that to multiple customers around the world. So the application of USB into aerospace, that's a key thing. We've been supplying charging onto trains for about 8-9 years now. What we're looking at now is the aerospace industry, and that's for twofold. One, this application here is actually a new generation of helicopter that's being designed and built in the UK, and we're designed into there, which is our first aerospace application. But we're also looking at how we can move into the commercial air, as in the big passenger airlines. The specification has changed from USB-A to USB-C. And therefore, over the coming couple of years, most people will have changed their phone and will have USB charging requirements rather than USB-A that you see on every single aircraft flying around today. So this is a very big market that will need to happen quite quick to change that. So we're working with several customers on taking that technology we've got and applying it and seeing what we can do in the aviation industry. And this is the first step of that. So in regards to certification, our connection systems business achieved AS9100. That is, if you want to put something onto a plane or into a defense application, you generally have to have this accreditation. Most companies will have ISO 9001. AS9100 is a specific aviation standard that a lot of customers require if you want to move into that industry. Our components division has AS9120, which is the distribution part of it. Our electronics division has IRIS, which is an equivalent for the rail system. So we've put this into our electromechanical connection systems business, because that then means all of our sites are running enhanced levels of quality system. We also see that as a big growth area because defence is a market receiving much investment at the moment. And because we have the context with our components division, we believe we can leverage our electromechanical division capabilities into that market as well, and hence putting the approval in place. They also achieved the ISO 14001, which is the environmental standard that has come to be expected now. Another thing of note was the continued expansion of our sales partners. When I took over in March 2020, I would estimate that we probably had about 6 good distributors around the world. And this is for a product range that we could sell around the world. We're now up with the acquisition of Redbox at around 50 partners around the world, covering our aviation and rail market. This is absolutely essential because our plan is, as well as the project business that we have, is to develop the sales channels and then a stream of product coming from our engineering departments that we can feed through our managed sales channels. This will hopefully scale the business very quickly and is already working in China and various other markets. We have here the Redbox acquisition. As I mentioned earlier, we had the Amphenol acquisition in the year, and we started the new calendar year in January by the Redbox acquisition, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. So the last 3 years have been quite busy. We have a complete new board, but it's not just new, the caliber is excellent. We have an NED who used to run various Siemens plants within the UK, and with Robert and Andrew, 2 other very good chairmen and NED, and with Stuart coming on board as well. It's a high caliber board that positions us for the future we want. Our factories are fully invested. During the last few years, we've finished off with new equipment, and we have state-of-the-art manufacturing capabilities, whether it's electronics or electromechanical. We have new teams. Our connection systems business, we have new MD, new engineering directors, new sales teams, and the same at our channel electric components division. trying to rebalance the business. So not only do we have the projects that are 4 million, 5 million at a time, but we also get standard components running through multiple customers around the world. We've been a little bit beholden to some of our customers and delays, and that's why results have been tricky over the last few years. We're absolutely aware of that, and we're trying to rebalance the business so that we have a more favourable revenue stream. And as you'll see, as I mentioned earlier, we've done our first acquisitions for over 20 years. This is all part of a bigger strategy review that we undertook. Our goal was to be at 50 million by the end of our financial year 27. Now, we finished at 22 million in our financial year 23. So it does seem a big jump. But if I can go back to 2018, where we had several projects that came together at the right time, at that point, we achieved sales of 28 million. If we were to add inflation to that today, it would be approximately 35 million. We now have more efficient and more invested factories, and we have better caliber teams working around the group. So if we can get back to those same levels that we achieved in 2018 and bolt on certain acquisitions, that is our way through to 50 million. Along the way, we will obviously need some better investors. We have lots of shares that sit with ex-employees and family, which is where the company was first listed. Those shares will become available at some point, and we would look to hopefully move those into a quality hand that can see the future for the group as we move forward. So the investment case is here, and as we've gone through, and we'll carry on going through. But a couple of points I'd like to bring out here. The high barriers to entry. In every market we are, in every country, we normally only have a handful of competitors. We're not up against a plethora of 20 or 30 people coming in from low-cost economies. Everything is about quality and the service that you bring. We have invested factories, as I've said. It's been a key part. I inherited very good factories, and we've continued to grow those. And the sales channels. We're trying to take the business away from being this bespoke engineering and trying to become a more balanced engineering that uses different sales channels in different areas. So I'm going to pass over to Stuart, who's going to take you through some of the financial results.
Thanks, Paul. So let me take you through the FY23 results. Firstly, the income statement and key highlights. And I'll just caveat the next couple of charts because in FY22, there was a significant land sale which generated 1.7 million in cash and was a profit of 1.5 million. That obviously gets embedded throughout the key financial statements and sort of distorts a like-for-like comparison. So looking at the order book there, we actually got a record year-end order book of 31.6 million, which is up 14% year on year. I'll go into a little bit more detail on that later. Order entry remained robust during the year as well, up 30%. From a revenue point of view, that was up 12%, and approximately 2/3 of that is volume and 1/3 is price. We do have escalation clauses in all of our longer term contracts. On the gross margin value added line there, you can see that our gross margin has held up, and more as important, the value add has slightly improved from last year, which is a sign of managing the material costs and direct labour and overheads. And that's especially important with the difficulties in recent supply chain availability and delays during the year. You'll note we do have an underlying loss again in the year of 0.1. It's slightly better than that. It's 69k loss, and last year was 226k loss. The bridge to profit before tax in both periods is exceptional items. In this year, it was the negative goodwill on the purchase of the Amphenol product line, and last year, as I said, it was a sale of the land. The EPS comes off the profit before tax. Net debt has gone up during the year, as you can see, and that's mainly a result of working capital investment in the product line acquisition I'll come back to later. You will also note that we've proposed a dividend of 0.01. This is really important to us. Historically, up until COVID, we used to pay a dividend. We think it is really good financial practice to do that, and we plan to adopt a progressive dividend policy going forward as the group grows. Now onto the balance sheet. The key things to pick out here is the increase in intangible assets. That's the result of the acquisition of the product line. No significant change to tangible assets. The pension scheme represents the surplus on our defined benefit scheme. This was closed over 10 years ago and is in extremely good position there. The next triennial valuation is due in May 24. The previous one in March 24. The previous one in March 21 had a surplus of 121%. There was a surplus of 145% in the March 23 valuation. Cash position remains strong. The gross debt represents primarily the bank finance, which was refinanced recently for another 5 years. That lasts for another 15 years. It's refinanced every 5 years, and there's a margin there. We pay on top of base of 2.25%. Moving on to the cash flow statement. So the key things to pull out here are that very broadly the same year on year, increase in working capital in 22.5, increase in 23.4, and there were investing activities of 0.3 in each year. The investing activities were split between property and plant and investment in capitalised R&D. The big change, as I mentioned on the cash flow at the bottom there, was due to the land sale. Moving on to a little bit more detail on the order book and revenue. So what we're showing here is that the order book, as I mentioned, of 31.6 is a record high for a period end. It was slightly higher during the year. That is split across the three businesses. It was at 14% year on year. The biggest element of that is in lighting systems, which has the more project-based business. The pie chart on the right-hand side there shows the forward split of the 31.6. 32% of that is going to get used in FY24, the current year, but you can see it's spread through to 2027. Moving on to a little bit more detail on the revenue. 3 charts here. The one on the left-hand side by sector shows a high degree of rail of 75%. That is actually up from 72% last year. So absolutely, that's up 17% year on year. Most of that is due to the purchase of the Amphenol product line. The other key item to pull out is that aerospace and defence has gone from 13% to 20%, which represents a 69% increase. As Paul alluded to, that's due to the distributors and new standard products. Moving across to the revenue by segment, you can see that most of that the highest amount is lighting systems. That remained broadly flat year on year. And the main increase over last year is through channel and connection systems. On the right-hand side here, you've got revenue by market. The key thing to pull out here is that our export revenue has gone from 35% to 39% year on year. So I'll pass back to Paul now to go through the forward-looking.
Excellent, thank you. So I know there's a question here for this as well. So how are we going to grow? Basically by organically and by acquisition. As you can see on the slide here, I'm just going to focus in on a couple of bits here. So if we look down on the organic side, on the left-hand side, standard products, lighting, relays, connectors, USBs, trains. This is our standard bits. So what we're looking at, how we can use that technology and move into new markets, and how we can develop new products into our existing markets. So an example here is Grammar, who was listed as one of the customers earlier. This is a German seat manufacturer, and we supplied to them USBs and lighting products for their seats, reading lights. So they got involved with the next generation TGV train for France, for Volkswagen. And what they required on that is actually they're nearly moving into aircraft technology with the seats. They want a full electric reclining seat in the train. So this means motor control, actuators, etc. So they came to us and could we do it? So we now supply the USB, the reading light, ambient light in the seat, and then we do all of the motor control at fault diagnostics that then talks back to the train computer. And we supply that to Grammar in Germany, who then build that seat and supply it to Alstom in France to go on the flagship TGV. That's taken something there. We used to supply maybe equivalent of £1 million on that project, where it would have been just lights and USB. But by designing the brain and doing everything else, that has become a £4 million project. Now, that's a £4 million project for 50 trains. Once these 50 are built, there'll be another 50 that then go behind. So that's an example of where we can take our existing products and technology, but leverage them further for new products to sell to our existing customers. We're also then looking at how we take our existing products into new markets. So I talked about USB here for trains, but we're looking at, can we put them onto planes as well? And as I said earlier, we've got that there. So we can look to develop new products into those existing markets. We're looking at rail infrastructure where we do limited, but can we take some of these products into the infrastructure? At the moment, we do special electrical connectors. So for the London Underground stations that are being refurbished, they have to be of certain qualities for smoke and toxicity. So in the event of a fire, they maintain the connection for, say, 3 hours. And if they do burn, they don't give off toxic fumes. So yes, that's important for stations, but that could also be important for buildings. It could be important for submarines or ships or various bits. So where can we take our products and move into other markets? That's where we're looking for our organic growth. Then we have our acquisitional growth. So the Amphenol product line we bought was a competitor. They had the same kind of products doing the same kind of things as us, but they weren't really interested in moving this forward. It wasn't part of their strategy. So we bought it, as said earlier, for £500,000. And what that actually gave us is a customer base of 2,000 cars. So this is on the Electrostar fleet of trains, which is, if you look at numbers on trains, would be the 377, the 378. South East run them, Great Western run them. And so these trains, approximately 15, 16 years old, will be around for another 20 years at least. And the connectors are really coming up for change. And so the £6 million business we've had already is only a quarter of the fleet that is out there. And it is only about 30%, 40% of the products that are actually on those cars. So that's been an absolute great example of us buying an existing marketplace. What we've also done is bought Redbox. This is in the existing markets, but new product territory. As I said, we built a distribution channel around the world. So we have our partners in China, Australia, and many other places. What we did was cut the world up into categories. So A grade are absolutely the high GDP, lots of aircraft flying. So that was absolutely essential that we had a good sales partner in all of those channels. And so I'm pleased to say that we're pretty much 95% covered in all of those A categories. We're then moving down into the B categories to make sure we're covered there. So as soon as we acquired this company, all of our distribution networks say, do we have access to that? So the answer is yes, as long as it doesn't conflict with the distributors that we've picked up by actually buying that company. So we're moving into a new product area with that. So this gives us ground power, DC ground power. And that's incredibly important because DC is a growing market around the world. And actually one of the things that is developing over in this section is actually new generation of electric flight. So if you look at companies like Joby, Lilium, in the UK you have Vertical Aerospace. This is a new breed of companies that are making electric aircraft. And I mentioned Vertical Aerospace in the UK. They have an order book of 1,400 aircraft that they will be supplying to Delta, Virgin, people like that. We have components designed into that aircraft, but what we're looking at is all of these aircraft are going to need charging systems similar to cars, but it's different because it's a different technology, it's a lot more power. So what we've brought with Redbox is the ability to say, we've been in this industry for 20 years. it gives us a foothold in the technology that we could leverage and then look to supply into this growing market. It also gives us a product line that we can take into our other markets of rail infrastructure and other areas there. Legislation that came out last year across Europe was that ports have to basically stop using diesel. So all of the ports around the world where the boats are coming in, they can't just sit there with diesel. They've got to have shore supply. They've got to be bringing electric in, a bit like aircraft, turn off the engines and bring in shore supply. That's going to need portable GPUs and various bits of equipment. So the red box also could be leveraged further down to there. So there's some examples of how we're looking to grow organically and by acquisition to get to our goal of 50 million. Talking about the two we've done, just to give some highlights of what they were. As I said, in March 23, the Amphenol product line acquisition, £500,000 investment, paid for by the end of the year, and then earnings enhancing as we go through the coming years. It's all in line with expectations. We fully integrated that within our Saffron Walden facility, so we manufacture everything at our site. And as I say, there's at least £50 million worth of revenue as those cars are refurbished over the coming years. If I come down to Redbox, this was a strategic where we bought the whole company. Again, we will integrate that within our Saffron Walden site. And our goal is to have that integrated by the end of April. That gives us a complete range of DC ground power equipment. And more importantly, it gives us access to the US market. When I talked about our sales partners, the US was the one area where we actually really do nothing. We supply to, as I say, to China, Australia, all through Europe, but America was a bit of a closed market to us. Interestingly, Redbox's biggest market is America, and they have a great partner over there that sells their product. We've already been in communications with them. We're going over to see them next month, and they're very excited of being able to take our other product lines to market. So it's an example of what we're buying. It's a technology, but it's also access to market. So moving forward, how do we decide on our acquisitions? We sat down, looked at it, and we're looking for opportunistic bolt-ons, of course. Amphenol, Redbox, they are opportunistic. They're quite small. We believe we can bring them in and leverage them to more than what they are. We're also looking at, on the journey, private companies up to 10 million in valuation. Now, this may be to get us to the 50, but it may be when we start to move beyond 50. But we've set at the moment a limit for that for obvious reasons. We're looking for product-driven businesses and not project. We have good project business. It's currently the majority of a lot of our turnover. What we're looking for is standard products that we can build and put through our growing distribution channels. We're looking for company with technology know-how or brand. They've got to be bringing us something that is worth something. We're also looking for access to markets. So, as I mentioned with the Redbox, that gives us access to America. So it gives us a good brand, it gives us credibility, it gives us a product line that we can leverage, but it gives us access to market as well. And we're also interested in acquisitions where we can use our invested factories. As I said, our electromechanical, our electronic factories are state of the art. We can make anything. So if we're buying companies that are subbing work out rather than manufacturing themselves, that's all added value that we can bring back within the group. So what are we looking at? We're confident about our goals of 50 million for 27. We're continuing to rebalance the business so that we have a healthy split across multiple countries and product and project. We have an acquisition pipeline. Those two that we've done are not where we intend to end. And the Redbox acquisition is testament to the criteria we're looking at. So we've had revenue growth in challenging times. We've been in transportation. When COVID hit, our market fell through the floor. Despite that, we've kind of hovered around the break even. We've invested heavily into the factories, redone the strategy, shown growth, but we're really now looking to take that even further. We've got a good order book. As Stuart said earlier, 31.6 million is a record for a year end. During the period, we actually peaked up at about 34, 35 million. Our 24 is trading in line with expectations, and the order book and our plans give us a lot of confidence that this will progress beyond the end of 25. So thank you very much, and we'll now open that up to some questions.
Perfect. Paul, Stuart, thank you very much for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab, which is situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the company take a few moments to review those questions submitted today, I'd like to remind you that recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. As you can see, we have received a number of questions throughout today's presentation, and thank you to all the investors for submitting those. Paul, Stuart, if I could just hand back to you just to read out those questions and give responses where it's appropriate to do so, and then I'll pick up from you at the end. The floor is back to you.
Okay.
Hi. Right, well, let me address a couple of the questions on cash and land. So first question is that, as I mentioned, we sold a piece of land in 2022, well in excess of book price. Yes, we did. We made a profit of 1.5 and profit of 1.5 million on a sale of 1.7 million. Do we intend to sell any more or do any sell and lease backs? No, we don't. As we mentioned in the presentation, our 3 facilities are freehold. We intend to keep them like that. We believe in the long term it's better to own our property, as that's better from a cash point of view. And I guess linking to that, our gearing ratio, whilst it went up in the year from 3.5% to 7.7%, still remains pretty low. So we're going to keep the property where we are. The second question linked to that is, can you explain how you intend to spend the 1.7 proceeds? So essentially it was a conscious decision to hold on to those proceeds, and as you'll see through the presentation there, we effectively used $500,000 of that on the acquisition of the Amphenol product line, and the balance of that is going through increased working capital, which you need as you grow in the business. Paul, did you want to answer the one on the team?
Yeah, so I'll make on 2. Yeah, it was our first acquisitions for over 20 years, and definitely my first. I've never done anything like that. And so it was a bit of a learning curve, but we've got some very good solicitors. We did a lot of research, but also we've got some great skill elsewhere in the group. So Stuart's been involved with that. He was involved with the sale of his last company, Eli. And we've got Alan Bates, who is at the Connection Systems, has been involved with several groups before, and done many acquisitions and integrated them within the factories. So yes, we were quite inexperienced compared to some of the bigger groups that do this a lot more, but they both got incredibly well, and we look forward to doing others. And just coming down to see some of the other questions. Do you want to take 5?
Okay, right. So with LPA's improved performance in the second half, can we expect to a continued positive trajectory? So our 24 guidance is in the market, where we see an increase of revenue to about 26 million and an EBIT of 0.8. And then 25 guidance is also out there at the moment, with turnover going up to 29 million and a 1.3 EBIT. Greatest risks over the sort of next 18 months, I guess we all see it in the news, the Red Sea issues may cause delays and increased costs to components. Inflation seems to be coming under control. Whilst we've experienced project delays in the past, most of the projects that Lighting Systems are working on now are actually coming into production. So there'll always be some schedule changes, but not the significant delays that we've suffered in the past. Interestingly, the central line project that we're working on at the moment was initially scheduled for 4 years ago. That's just started in the last few months. So hopefully we're past the majority of that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I see a question here, 6 from Colin. Do we see the growth being organic or M&A? I think, as I said earlier, we see it both. Absolutely key to us, and we intend to do more acquisitions, but we're definitely not going to rely on that. We've got to grow our existing businesses as well.
I guess just perhaps before we move to the next one, I guess the other point we'd perhaps like to push on is that the market cap's about 11 million at the moment. The net assets are nearer 16 million. So that's we've got fully invested facilities, and that's we believe it's a good case for investment at the moment.
Yeah. So coming down to what would leave us on to last, why should we invest in LPA? We have great technology, great people, great marketplace, expanding our reach around the world, and great ambitions. We've ridden out some really quite difficult times, and although the results haven't been spectacular, a lot of good work has been, and we're still here when a lot of other companies are struggling much more. With a bit of a good win behind us and the strategy we've got, it really could get quite exciting moving forward. And we're definitely not here just to look after this company. We're here to drive this forward. So as Stuart said there, the share price is currently under the net asset value. So really there's not much downside, but there could really be some quite exciting upsides. So I'll leave it on that. Thank you very much for your time.
Perfect. Paul, Stuart, thank you very much for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of LPA Group PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good afternoon to you all.
Thank you.
Okay.